Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Lattix training. My name is Neil Langmead. Today, we're going to cover part three, and this focuses on conceptual architecture diagrams, or CAD diagrams for short. And what we're going to learn is that the CAD diagram is one of the primary ways to visualize a project within Lattix. It's easy to understand and to communicate architectural intent with a CAD diagram. It shows at a glance what the big building blocks of a system are and how parts of the system relate to one another. It's also called a box in a box diagram. The diagram shows the hierarchical decomposition in the form of boxes. When you expand a box, you see the subsystems within that box. The placement of boxes is suggestive of either a layered or a peer-to-peer relationship. Just like the dependency structure matrix, you can also apply partitioning algorithms to the CAD. The boxes are then structured and laid out in a way that's designed to show you the result of that partitioning. And you can also edit the conceptual architecture diagram and the diagrams themselves until they appear as you wish. Used in combination with dependency structure matrices, they work as a very powerful tool for communicating the architecture in a different way. So without further ado, let's go back to Lattix. Here we have the standard dependency structure matrix review, and you can see here that the dependency structure matrix is partitioned. In this case, our example ISO-glib, which we've been using throughout this training, has partitions, and we read down the column to see what a component is using. We read across the row to see what a component is used by. But now I can select any one of these components and create the conceptual architecture diagram. So suppose I want to do it for COM, driver, and util. I would select those in the dependency structure matrix, right click, and you can see here new view, and I have either the ability to create a new dependency structure matrix or a new conceptual architecture. So I'm going to choose conceptual architecture today as it's a CAD diagram that we want to create. And what you can see is it's created the boxes and arrows for the CAD. And immediately I can move these around and I can see the relationships between these components dynamically update as I do that. One tip that we would give is if you right click here, you can see a lot of empty space because I only chose three components, and maybe you only want to show a few of the higher level components. I can actually select remove empty space and proportionally resize other subsystems, and that will just create a, a more tidier diagram. Or I can remove empty space, shrink container from the bottom to make the whole diagram smaller, or shrink it from the top, or resize subsystems above to fill the space. So I'm just going to select remove empty space and proportionally resize the systems. Now we have a nice big CAD diagram to play with and clearly showing the relationships between COM, util, and driver in this case. Now I could further go and select one of these components, resize it. I mean, typically you see that COM here represents 80% of my system, util here 3%, driver 4%. So we can actually use the CAD to communicate the relative sizes of our subsystems as well, which is a useful feature. But let's say I want to expand COM into those layers we've been working with, then I can select that, make these a little bit bigger so that people can see the services and the independent subsystems within COM in this case. So I can use the diagram, and as I move, you can see the relationships updating, including the rule violations. They're also shown in the CAD diagram as well as the dependency structure matrix. And I can do the same for driver, expanding and resizing. This represents 4% of my system. So now you can see all the relationships going to, in this case, the CAN and the system parts of the driver subsystem. So that's a very basic first view of CAD. Let's just go back to the documentation. And we have on our Lattix training page, docs.lattix.com, we have in the training, in this part, working with a conceptual architecture diagram. We've seen how to create a CAD. So on Project Home, click on the new conceptual architecture diagram link. That creates a CAD diagram with the outermost container. There are also options for line display. So you can do view, CAD lines, show dependency lines. That's here on the view menu. You can actually use the CAD lines options here to turn on or off certain lines in the diagram. The violations, for example, could be switched off. The other relationships, the CAD dependency lines could be switched off here, and you just have the actual components themselves if that's what you wanted to focus the viewer on. So lots of different options there to toggle on and off with the CAD lines. And just going to switch those back on. Understanding the conceptual architecture, well, as the documentation says, this is the top level subsystem with the relative size. This is 19%. This larger part represents 81% of our system, so it's bigger. And you can see the layer boundaries here are shown with these lines, and also the dependency strength. So COM depends on how, with a strength of 5, in this case, it's a stronger dependency, and the nested boxes show that containment. How to manipulate the conceptual architecture diagram. We've seen how to create that for the first time. We've moved it around. It's a graphical editor. We can select and move things around with the left mouse button, as we've done, and resize by grabbing the handles of the edges of the box. We can also create new layers. If you right-click in the CAD diagram, you can also create new components here and further add to the CAD diagram. My new component. And this updates both the DSM and the CAD diagram. So we can actually create new components here as well. For example, if I just right-clicked here and create a subsystem, this is my new component. I can do it this way. That creates new components. And then I can select, again, to generate a CAD diagram from this, from the new view, and do it that way, or update the CAD diagram itself directly. So moving a box relative to another box is also very easy on the CAD diagram. So back to Lattix, and let me just find my diagram, which is this one here. You can move things relative to another very easily. So if HAL conceptually belongs beneath util, then you can actually drag that down and resize. And that kind of gives you the positioning of the layer as well as the dependencies to that layer. That would work quite nicely. As with 2025.1 and later versions of Lattix, we have these named views. So once you have a particular view, you could actually name this CAD diagram, for example, as this is ISO AGlib CAD with utils expanded with the default filters. And then this view here can then quickly be socialized and published, for example, via Lattix Web to show that particular view and communicate that particular representation of the architecture to colleagues and other stakeholders. Moving a box to a new layer is also possible. We can select the line to move a box to a new layer and move the box near to the edges of the box, and that allows you to create a new layer at the bottom. Resizing, we've also seen in this short demonstration, and removing the empty space by right-clicking those options and selecting to remove the empty space will actually remove at the bottom if you choose that top option. And you can also proportionally distribute. There's an icon to do that as well, which will actually represent a tidier version of the diagram in some people's minds. So you have those functionalities. And then other operators you can just find via the edit menu for create, rename, delete, and hide in the CAD. And as always, right click is your best friend here. Right click, and you can look at the CAD layout properties for that particular diagram. You can hide the subsystem. You can, for example, delete the subsystem or hide it if you wanted to remove it from the diagram, and then that's gone from the CAD diagram as well. And if you didn't want that to be permanent, you can actually just undo with Control Z, and that will undo. You can also select multiple components and create parent subsystems for this. So this is a new component, and you can do that in the CAD diagrams as well. And that'll create a new component and put this component that we've just selected into that new component. And then you can use resize to revisualize that component in the diagram. So as always, this is fully described as well in docs.lattix.com on the page that I'm showing now as well. You can apply partitioning by selecting a subsystem, putting down the appropriate algorithm. So here again, you can select the whole hierarchy and then partition according to different algorithms, and it will rearrange the diagram accordingly. Sometimes that takes a few moments depending on the algorithm that you've chosen, and that gives you a different visualization of the CAD diagram according to the proximity algorithm. And if you didn't like that, you can go back to, for example, the component partitioning, which has that more natural representation for software systems, in my opinion, because it's showing the usages at the bottom and the functions that use are at the top. So you can actually experiment with partitioning inside the CAD as well and create the visualization according to the partitioning algorithm that you're using at the time. Then we also have layering rules that are shown in the CAD diagrams. They could be the desire for independent subsystems that we've looked at in other parts of the training, or layer boundaries or layers within coupling systems, coupled systems, and we show the coupling too in the CAD diagram. So for more information, do please consult docs.lattix.com, search for training and search for this section, working with the conceptual architecture diagram. That concludes today's short training. Thank you for listening and see you again soon. Bye bye.